Good morning, Robert Hermann. It's now nearly 2 years since I told you about an incident involving myself when I was much younger and at school. I told you about the time when I was at school. I was what was called the chalk monitor, which meant that my job was to clean the blackboard. We had a blackboard back then. Clean the blackboard, and at the end of each day, and I mentioned that somebody had annoyed me, irritated me to such an extent that I'd written something very abusive on the blackboard and left. One of the problems was the person in question shared the same surname as the Dean of Discipline, and next morning, instead of this fellow pupil seeing the message on the board, it was actually the teacher. Luckily not the Dean of Discipline that found it, but it was the teacher that came in and found this message that I'd written on the board. So when I arrived at school, my classmates told me, that this message had been left and that the teacher wasn't very happy. And I knew immediately what I had to do. I had to go and own up, and I did so, without any hesitation whatsoever. I immediately went to the staff room. I owned up. I got a punishment of a 4-page biology essay. The teacher was, I didn't like him very much, but and I don't think he liked me very much, but he was begrudging in his respect for me at the fact that I had immediately gone to him and owned up to what I'd done. As I say, he gave me the 4-page essay to be finished to be presented the next week on the Monday, which I did, and it was left at that. And of course, all of my classmates, they all said, well, it was a stupid thing to do. What were you playing at? And I said, look, I've just owned up. It's sorted. And I think they were appreciative of the fact that I'd had the courage to admit to my mistake and go and take whatever punishment was likely to happen. Back then it was actually the worst punishment would be if the teacher told your parents, because then I would really have been in big trouble. Anyway, so we're nearly 2 years later. You'll remember the first thing I ever said to you was that I was appalled at what happened in Manitowoc to Stephen, Avery and Brendan Dassey, and I'm still appalled at it. Probably the main reason I got in touch with you initially was because I realised that, Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department has been permanently stained by the falsehood and dishonour of, one or two of your officers there. I must confess, it's 2 years since Making a Murderer came out. I am a little disappointed that other officers in your department, as yet we haven't heard of any of them coming forward, and I can't imagine that they're particularly enamoured with the fact that they are being dragged down because of the actions of, as I say, one or two. My question, one of the questions I would ask would be, do you think that you can gag them and suppress them permanently? Are you such a tyrant there that you can prevent any kind of leakage? I don't know. As I say, I've heard things about the goings on in Manitowoc, but and I've read certain reports and things. So I don't know if your control is enough to, as I say, to suppress people permanently. As you know, I do have a huge respect for the work of law enforcement. As I say, are you going to continue to allow one or two bad apples to spoil the whole bunch? Another thing I'd like you to consider is that, you know, as with my message on the blackboard, it wasn't something that I did every day. It was a one-off, and I owned up. So please, I really do want you to think very carefully about what you can do to help your department and your community, and above all yourself, because doing nothing and sitting back and waiting is going to be the worst thing you could possibly do. It really is a case of you need to own up. You can save yourself such a whole load of damage. As I say, as I've said before, you could go from 0 to hero on this. Please, Robin, as I've said to you before, if not as a friend, then as an enemy. You know, think about what's headed your way, and you know it's going to be even worse. You know, you might think, oh well, I've hung on for these 2 years, and I'm still, you know, still the sheriff here, and nothing's changed. It's not going to continue like that. There's so many developments in this case. As I say, how long are you going to be able to suppress the thoughts of some of your fellow officers there in Manitowoc? Okay, I'll speak to you again sometime in the future. Bye for now.